Hey everybody, it's Nancy Shenker and I am the Geezerproofer. I just launched my podcast and this is the first time that I've had a guest and I'm not just talking to myself. My guest today here at Podpopuli is a really important dude. It's Brian Howie, who is not only the founder of Podpopuli podcasting studios, but he knows so much about this topic because he is also the founder of The Great Love Debate, which is a series of events and content to teach people about how to find their favorite love or not. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today on The Geezerproofer, which is a great topic to kick things off with because everybody now is consumed with The Golden Bachelor and finding love later in life. And the topic for today's discussion is, why are you still single? And Brian and I both know a lot about that. I was married for 27 years. I've been single on and off for about 10, but I only really count the last 3 years because I was in a 4-year relationship somewhere along the way. And Brian has actually never, ever, ever been married.
Correct, but it's only like 11:15. So we'll see. You use the word, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be and proud to be your lose your virginity guest on your podcast, but you use the word single, and that is obviously a good determining noun, adjective for what people are. I think people tend to mix up between single and available, and it's how many years somebody is available, whether it's emotionally or realistically or got out of a bad relationship, that really determines a lot of things. You can be not in a relationship and not necessarily available. So people have to flip that mindset, and people have to sort of let themselves and the world know that I am available to no longer be single if the right person, circumstance comes in front of me. So a lot of people are not with a partner, and I'm not sure that pool is the one we should focus on. I think you should focus on the available people, and a lot of people don't even know how to define themselves that way.
That's actually a really great point. And there are people who are available for sex, and there are people who are available emotionally, and there are people who are available for both with multiple people.
And there's people who are available who aren't necessarily single.
This is true. This is true. And I think sometimes people don't even know if they are available until they get out in the dating world. And one of the products that I think is kind of genius is this ring that I'm wearing. And those of you who are listening and don't have the video can't see it, but it's a blue ring that was invented by a company called Pair. And basically what it is a ring that just indicates that you are available. And
your taxi light is on. Your cab light's on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And a lot of times, I ask people this all the time. I'm like, are you available to be dated? Are you able to be dated? And then people are like, I don't know. And I go, can somebody go up to you at Whole Foods and start talking to you? And I'm always shocked at the amount of people who give me that instant, like, God, no. Where for decades, at least probably most of the audience here, that's what we had to do. Like, if you wanted to have any chance to create a spark or to get a relationship, you had to physically, face-to-face, somebody had to say hi. Somebody had to hit the ping pong ball over the net and hope it hit it back, and we had to do that. Now the idea of that is so strange to people, talking to a stranger in any kind of environment, that I think that mindset is something that we need to change and really think about. When you're out of your house, when you leave your house, are you available to be interacted with? I'll just say that.
And what are you available for? Again, keep coming back to that point, because I think in our hypersexualized society, when somebody posts a picture on Bumble, and I've gotten this feedback, there was a picture of me that's kind of a provocative picture, and a guy said to me, well, if you weren't down to hook up on the first date, why did you post that picture? And
can you say, I just felt good that day?
Well, that's exactly what I did say. So just backtracking a little bit, how old are you, Brian, if you don't mind my asking?
56.
And do you ever get the women who say, oh, you've never been married, there must be something wrong with you, you're a piece of bruised fruit?
Yes, and they're right. They're right. I am not somebody who's, first of all, I am somebody who has always liked the how come you're still single question, because they only ask it to people who on some level are desirable. If the answer is obvious why you're still single, they're not asking that question. A lot of people are bothered by that. They feel pressured by that. My aunt's always like, why you're still single? It means that you seem attractive to some degree to people. So the question is a compliment. So people who run from that question. But I, used to make that same kind of joke, like, how come you're still single? And I would say, like I did before, like, it's only 11 o'clock, blah, 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 because I was trying to deflect. And I think that I was one of those people. So almost my entire adult life, I have been in relationships, long-term relationships. But I would give the women in those relationships enough emotional attention without giving them any emotional vulnerability, which is what they want. So I was very, very walled off as to why. So I had to go to therapy for this and sort of wonder. So my parents...
Have the walls come down?
Tremendously. My parents were married, I guess till my dad died. They were married till, 57 years. I don't even think they liked each other. So that example to me, because I didn't trust their love for each other, meant that I didn't trust their love for me, which means I didn't really trust the concept. And so that is how I kind of led my life. Like, what is this nebulous thing that people talk about? I don't really know that feeling. There wasn't a lot of talk about love. There wasn't a lot of I love yous in my house growing up. There wasn't anything. So I was constantly protected. I would kind of live my life in this middle bandwidth, not a high ceiling, not a low floor, like in the middle, because you're protecting yourself all the way. So I'll be in these relationships for a long time. And my girlfriends, after a while, they would be like, don't you understand? Like, we have to go to a different level here. And I always say the resume I handed in was for boyfriend, not husband. Like, it was because I knew my skill set. That seemed like, husband and 50 years of commitment, all that. That seems like, I don't know if I can do that. And I want to get divorced. I started doing the Great Love Debate, and which is sort of a live touring show. We go all over the world to sort of figure out the disconnect and the state of the date. And when we started that show, I kind of put myself above the fray. Like, I was almost like Jerry Springer. I was like men against the women, blah, blah, blah. But after doing it about a year and a half, 2 years, I noticed that a lot of people, especially the men, were talking about things and experiencing things and feeling things in their relationships or in their dates that I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about, which drove me to therapy. And therapy had me go back and, talk to 5-year-old Brian and do all this stuff, and led me to believe that, like, this is what people are talking. And then, so a lot of work, the walls started to come down. Somebody came to my show about a year after I started to do therapy, and she goes, oh, hey, I came to the show in San Diego about a year and a half ago. And she goes, I can't believe the difference. And I was like, yeah, the show's a little different. We evolved. She goes, no, you seem like a different person. I didn't like to hear that. That freaked me out. That seemed too vulnerable.
What she should have said is, you're a better version of
She meant
not to
it.
Therapize your therapist.
Oh, I know, and a lot of my listeners have noticed the same thing too. That was too much to be too publicly available to the world. So I had to then do the work, internalize, or whatever. So to answer your question, it's a little easier for me to say, like, yeah, I could do 50 years with one person because I'm older, probably don't have 50 years. But I had to go back, and I actually contacted a couple of, old girlfriends and stuff. And I'm like, I honestly didn't know what you were talking about.
Right. I call that relationship atonement.
Yeah, we're having fun, and we were laughing, and we went to a lot of movies. And she's like, you don't know what a relationship means. Like, you just didn't know. And I didn't. Yeah. So that's my answer as to why, surprisingly, when you give an answer, when you own it, when you own the reason for why, and you don't say things like, I was just busy, or I was focused on my career, or I haven't met the right person yet, or anything, people like the ownership of it, because then you recognize whatever the reason is. All that other stuff is excuses. Because I would judge somebody too. If I met a woman over 40 and she'd never been married, I absolutely would judge her. And I should. We all should be judged. Yeah, it's societally abnormal.
And I do always ask that question if I ever date somebody who's never been married, never had kids. That's always a very early on question. And that's a great point, because if they own it and they say, I met this terrific person and I just really wasn't ready to take it to the next step, or I'm selfish and I like having my own life and doing my own thing. Yeah,
that's bad. And I never wanted to have, goes back to my parents. My parents didn't seem to enjoy it that much. Didn't seem that fun. So a lot of this, I'm not trying to blame them. I'm trying to sort of explain it away.
Because everything does have its roots in childhood trauma,
yeah,
as we both know.
My parents, kind of oh, you had a fair amount of money, you had a privileged childhood. I'm like, I don't know if it was privileged. I kind of wanted like my dad to throw the ball around. I kind of wanted a hug. So it was like something that wasn't talked about. So I started to, my entire professional career, I think I have been writing, directing, producing questions about the dynamic between men and women, because I thought that if I could get some of the answers by raising the questions, that somehow that would give me the keys to unlocking a whole lot of stuff. And I probably have 5% of the answers. But that's a lot more than most. Yeah.
Let me take the conversation in a slightly different direction. Obviously, many of us are out there dating. We're on the apps. We're meeting people in real life. Mm-hmm. Do you have any insights into when along the process, how much time you should give the process before you decide whether or not somebody is worth committing to? And by committing, I don't mean getting down on a knee, doing the bachelor proposal with the roses, but just taking it to that next step. Because that's something that I think a lot about, that as we are over 50 and have had this life experience and see patterns, sometimes we will be out with somebody and then they'll say or do something that triggers something. And we say, oh, no, that's not the person.
Well, I know. We tend to pull the parachute way too early. At some point in the relationship, whether it's the first 20 minutes of the date or 20 dates in, you're going to have some moment that's kind of ick. And you're going to, I didn't know they do that. You're going to have to decide, do I want to fight through this? Because this is going to happen no matter how great the person is. Problem is now we used to, and this is a good thing about dealing with this generation. This generation, people over 50, for the most part, when we dated, we had to pick you up. We had to. Like, you're going to pick me up. It's a proper date. What that did was meant that you're committing, you're trusting me a little bit to do that, because an air of chivalry, I'll hold the door, all this stuff. And you're basically like, I'm committing to a certain amount of time with this person because they're my ride. Now it's, I'll meet you out, and if I'm not feeling magic in 10 minutes, I'm out of there. It's a terrible way to date.
Well, that's also, I think this fear. I had a date the other day, somebody picked me up, and he sent me a copy of his driver's license just so I could Google search him to make sure he wasn't the next serial killer. And I think the level of paranoia.
People watch too much Dateline. They watch too many Lifetime movies. Like, we didn't.
Dirty John.
Women are always like, because they come to my show and they bring this up all the time. They're like, we used to know you better. No, you didn't. I had a pen and a napkin at 2:00 in the morning, gave me your number, and I'm like, I had to pick you up. You know more about this person if you meet them online now and you do just cursory research than you ever did before.
Right, you could see where they live. You could go inside their bathroom on Zillow.
Well, yeah, a lot of women say that too. Like, I don't want them to know where I live. As soon as I have your phone number, I know where you live. Exactly. I can find you.
Exactly.
And if I'm a psycho, I can hide it for 3 or 4 days. So that's not going to help you either. You don't have this long history of first date, people locking you in the trunk and taking you out to the woods. Like, it just didn't happen. And people have this fear-based dating. We were psychopaths in the 80s and 90s. So I don't know why you think we're any worse now. We're no better. You just didn't care as much about it.
And it's now in the media. Now you read about it. Every TV show is about it.
Because people want to share their horror stories. My point on all this is, we gave the date a fair shot. You gave it, at least minimally in your head, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever it is. It wasn't 15 minutes for coffee and on to the next if I don't feel magic. And so to go back to your question is, when is it time to commit? I don't even think you need to think about that. I think you need to be like, every single time you meet this person or talk to this person is, do I want to do this again? And the more you just keep rolling that ball down, do I want to do this again? Do I want to do this again? And then at some point you have the conversation is, do I want to do this again with just you? And that's up to you. I think it's if you decide that. I don't know. Like, you're committing to what? Another date?
Well, let's talk about sex for a minute, because first of all, everyone loves to hear about sex.
Yeah.
And, when I moved out to Arizona about 5 years ago, and I've been meeting a lot of people, and I talked to one guy, a friend, not a date, who told me that he had met 5 women on Bumble, Tinder, Match, and all 5 of them wanted to have sex on the first date. Mm-hmm. So that sort of creates an expectation.
Well, they're old. How old are they?
All right.
Right. So those,
50.
That's different now, because people understand if you have sex when you're, that age, it's not necessarily a referendum on whether the person likes you. And it's not necessarily a reward because you've dated a long time. It just is something that you might want. That being said, people who are like, I'm going to wait to have sex till I find out if I, like this person or I'm in a committed relationship. You have no idea until you have sex, because the sex is going to change things. And you're basically now dating a different person. So whatever. We twice have done this. We have surveyed 1,000 couples who describe themselves as happy. Okay? Self-described happy couples, and asked them when they first had sex. The overwhelming number one answer is the first date. The number two answer is the second date. And the number three answer is the third date. It doesn't mean if you have sex, it's going to magically turn into a relationship. It means that you went into this scenario with no limits and you were willing to go with the feeling and ride it out and whatever. Lots of people who are met, and people are like, oh my God, I'd never do that. Go talk to your friends. They did do that. Most people who are in relationships did do that.
But what about the people who are not in relationships, who had sex early on?
They're trying to get in a relationship. You have sex with somebody on the first date, you hope to like them.
But how do you find out if the other person is in the same headspace that you're in? Because what I've found from my, limited however many years of dating experience is that there is a fundamental, and maybe you have data that proves this otherwise. I do think that for men, having sex doesn't necessarily have as much meaning as it does for many, but not all women.
It has a different kind of meaning. Here's why we need sex from you early. Okay?
Hopefully not now and not on camera.
No, well, maybe can we get a second camera?
That's a different show.
Different show. Better show. No. Here's why the men need some action on the first date. Okay? And this goes back to when we're 18. We go out with you. We pick you up, we take you out, and we tell you you're beautiful, and we tell you, look, we compliment you to death. And all we're really getting back is thank you or cool or whatever. We don't get nearly as much stuff back. We have no idea what you're thinking, feeling, wanting, liking out of any of us. The sex to us, or at least making out in the car, tells us she doesn't think I'm gross. She must desire me on some level. She must like me. If you went on a date with somebody and you said, listen, I'm not going to have sex with you till I get completely comfortable, but once I get comfortable, it'll blow your mind. He will calm down because he knows then that you think of him that way. And when I get to you that way, like if you just bring a notary on your date and be like, I will have sex with you when I like you, because then he won't need,
I love that.
He won't need the sex.
I think there's a product in there that we can.
I agree with that. Like sign something, be like, listen, I think I want to get there. I just need to get comfortable with me. Because then he doesn't need that sort of, we need the sex early on because it's like, that's all we're getting back from you. Women have to be more communicative. If they don't want to have the sex is the answer. They do need to be a lot more verbal about it. A lot of women are like, he could tell I liked him. We can't tell. It's like at a level only dogs can hear. We have no idea. So the sex isn't necessarily about the sex. It's not about the physical necessarily for the man. It's about the
validation.
It's the love language is overwhelmingly the number one love language for men is words of affirmation. Women all think it's physical touch. It's not. If we got the words, we don't necessarily need the sex, at least not that quickly.
And if you got the words and the sex at the same time,
all good.
And
I think people are like, oh, I don't want to have sex on the first date. I want to find because I want it to mean something. I think anybody who has sex, you hope to like them, and then you want to call them the next day. I think you're like, not like, I'm going to have sex and then I'm going to hate them and leave. Like that's rare. I think people want to have sex because they desire the person, and then they hope that they go get eggs, and then
eggs
you keep it going. Breakfast.
Eggs as in freezing.
No, and then you go get a waffle. I don't know. But I think that like this idea that to some people, oh, I just want sex, whatever. Those people are very emotionally either walled off or damaged from a relationship. And they're like, if I get any part of emotional beyond the physical, and this is men and women too, that opens a can of worms I want to deal with. A lot of women are like, I'll only have sex with a guy if I know I don't like them. Have you heard women say that?
Yes, absolutely. Or it's like scratching an itch where I'm like, I just need validation, so I'm going to go out and...
then you're playing games. I mean, you want to play games with yourself? Have at it. But I'm not sure that's a good way to find what you're ultimately looking for.
Do you think you would ever have another long-term relationship or get married?
Of course.
And what would it take for you to, to actually put a ring on it and get down on a knee? Is there?
I don't even know if that's see, when you get to my age too, almost the entire pool has been divorced.
Right.
they're not in any rush to get married because it didn't work out for them. So to me, I would probably be more likely to want to get married because I've never done it before. But divorced people aren't nearly as like wanting to get married. But yeah, I would do it if she's like, this is important to me. See, that's the thing. I would have these relationships and I would always know to bail out before it got to that ultimatum point, before it got to like, if we're dating at the end of the year, we better get married or have kids. Like I knew how to navigate that. But now somebody's like, listen, I really like this and this is important to me and me too. I'm in. Big ring, in.
Exactly. I mean, and I say that all the time is that I want to I wouldn't get married again, but I want to get engaged. I want a nice piece of jewelry. I've been watching way too many episodes of The Bachelor. The thought of somebody staging some romantic moment and saying, you are my person. Yeah,
this is my guy. This is my girl, whatever it is. There needs to be talk about that ring there you have on. There needs to be some signifier, because I always think at this point, like if I wanted a word above girlfriend, because I've had a million girlfriends. So just another, this is my girlfriend. I think there needs to be more. And we kind of have to leap to fiance. But if there was something that is just like, this is my favorite girlfriend of all the girlfriends, she's the best. I don't know if it's a t-shirt. I don't know if it's a piece of jewelry of some kind that's like, this is the one. We might not be married, but she is definitely the one I waited for or whatever. I wish there was another word.
I know people say ride or die, but I hate that because the whole death thing, especially since we're talking about people over 50. And just to reassure you, and I threw out this statistic on my first episode, in 1991, I think there were only like 90,000 people who lived to be over 100. Mm-hmm. By 2050, that number is going to be 4 million. And somebody just sent me an article about how sexual activity is really key to brain function, longevity, overall health, so that you can make a really good case for...
Yeah, I agree. So somebody said to me, I think there's like ways to say, if somebody's like, is that the girl? I'm like, yeah, that's the girl. That sounds better than my girlfriend too. Like, that's the girl.
Yeah, that's like my person.
There's ways to say it and how you express it that lets people know, like, everybody out. But you have to be comfortable with that. You have to be able to think, can I do this? So only 6-7 years ago was I to the point where I'm like fully confident, like, oh, I get it. I can do this. I've done enough work. No problem. I don't want to have sex with everybody in the room. That's done. Like, I don't need to do that either. There's a point you go through in that.
And haven't you also seen situations where people will couple up just so that they don't have to be alone? And that was one of the most profound things that my therapist ever said to me when early on, when I'd first gotten separated, she said, are you ready to be alone? And I'm like, be alone? I've had a boyfriend since I was 14. What do you mean, am I ready to be alone? But there are a lot of people, I see them every day, who panic that they don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and it's like a bizarre game of musical chairs.
Yeah, or they lily pad it. They need to jump from, they have the next one lined up. You know, a lot of people would rather be in a bad relationship than no relationship. And that's bad. That being said, the best way to get into a good relationship is to get out of the bad relationship. You can't get out of it. So when I ask people this all the time too. If you asked every single person who is single, available, whatever you want to say, would you like to be in a happy, loving, sharing, trusting, honest, sexually active relationship with just one other person for the next 50 years? Almost everybody would sign for that. They just don't trust the possibility. They don't treat, they're like, I don't believe that that's a thing, but if you could guarantee it, everybody wants that.
Or to your point earlier, you know, because of the ubiquity of the dating apps, somebody drops, you know, their mayonnaise from their BLT on their shirt, and someone's really quick to say, oh, they're slob, that's not my person.
But if you could say this is the person. Now, the problem is that they look at the choices as alone or bad relationship as sort of 90% of the possibilities, and a very remote possibility of that good relationship. So either they don't trust the odds are good, or they don't trust the path to get there. And until you start to trust that the possibility that it can happen and that one or many people could fulfill that need for you, but especially, you know, people get older in life and they've had a divorce or 2 divorces or 10 broken relationships or whatever. The happy ever after is gone for a lot of people.
Is there a couple that is in the public that you think actually is a really happy couple?
Yeah, the couple that I always, because people bring this up to me a lot, Warren Beatty famously dated the world.
Right.
Okay? He's the most famous bachelor for a long, long time ever. Dated everybody, was never going to single. Annette Bening, they've been married 30 years now. They were married like 30 years. He didn't get married till he was deep into his 50s. She got him, and that was it. He was done. And that's the couple that I like. That's the couple I like because he went through the same shit. Because when you get to my age and you've never been married, even if she's comfortable with that fact, her friends and her family are yapping in her ear. Like, he's just a playboy, or he's just this, or he's got whatever. And Warren Beatty went through that more than anybody. And then he met the girl, and they're still together.
Yeah, and Sting also seems to have a really good relationship.
He does.
Kevin Bacon.
But they've been together a long time. I look at somebody who was single a long time, and whatever she got him to do, good for her. People used to think, George Clooney used to pretend he was this lifelong bachelor. He was married for 4 years, a long time ago. And he kind of put that out of his PR, and pretended he was a bachelor, and then he finally met it. He'd been married. Warren Beatty'd never been married. And he went that long. But there's some, there's a lot of showbiz couples. Like we finally found out today that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett really haven't been together for 7 years. So there's a lot of showbiz convenience, whatever it is. But I look at that one, somebody who led one kind of life for a long, long time, now leads, they have kids and everything, a completely different kind of life, and was able to make that pivot in his 50s.
All right, so I have one last question for you. Can I be in your wedding party when you finally meet your person?
Well, you could you could do the ceremony. Like you can.
Cool. I'll have to
in the state of California, anybody can
be an officiant. Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is.
The state of California, who tries to get involved in everything, they're basically like, if you guys are fine with it, we're fine with it, which is a weird thing for California. It's like, you want to have your best friend do it? Go. No paperwork. Done.
And is there any one woman from your dating past that you view as the one who got away? I sometimes hear that from people.
Never. I have, and no, not that they aren't awesome and couldn't be. I just feel like I don't know what they would have been like if I was different. Like you can't judge that relationship because it didn't work out. So all I knew was them in a dysfunctional relationship, mostly because of me. So I don't know, but I wish them all well.
Yeah, and I think there are rebound relationships that work out. You sometimes read these romance stories of couples that met in high school and then they went their separate ways. And
totally.
They got back together. But in general, whatever it was that tore you apart the first time, unless both people have done extensive work on themselves, chances are that shit's still going to be around.
I was a huge skeptic of the Ben Affleck, Jennifer Lopez thing, but I'm coming around on it. It might be legit. They might just understand each other's shit, Yeah,
exactly. You never really know what goes on in someone's house or in their life.
If there was something that people always like, there must have been something that broke us apart. Well, there must have been something that got you together. I always think it's weird that boyfriends and girlfriends often break up and get back together. Husbands and wives, when they get divorced, almost never do. And when you think about that, husband and wife, you had a much more serious bond and you might have children and you shared a life. People always answer that. They're like, once you get legal paperwork involved, there's no going back.
And one of our future shows is going to have to do with love and money, which I think is a friend
once
of
you
mine.
Start fighting over possessions.
Things get weird.
Yeah.
So, Brian, this has been really, really terrific. You broke my podcast cherry, as it were.
There you go.
I'm much more confident now to go forward with other guests, but no one, of course, will be as entertaining as
it's all downhill from here.
But if you'd like to be a guest on my show, please get in touch at nunuventures1956@gmail.com and listen on Apple, Spotify, whatever your favorite outlet is. And if you'd like to actually see what Brian and I look like, you can find this interview on YouTube and Vimeo. And I really appreciate you all listening, and welcome to what is going to be at least 50-year run.
I'm your first guest, so I'm going to let you. You got to let me plug. You got to let your guests plug whatever they want to plug.
Absolutely. But before I let you plug, I'm just going to say, I'm planning on living to at least 100, 120. So you get another 50 plus years of listening pleasure from the Geezer Proofer. So plug away, Brian.
GreatLoveDebate.com, or you can email me, greatlovedebate@gmail.com. You can go to our website. You can go to all the socials and check out our podcast, 400 and something episodes we're up to now, 8 years of podcasting. So please like, share, follow, review that podcast, review this podcast, because your reviews mean a lot in the podcasting ecosystem. Thank you for having me. This was very good.
And if you want a place to record your podcast, I'm going to now give Brian a plug. I was very, very resistant to launching a podcast, and then I discovered Podpopuli, which is just super convenient. I don't have to buy any of my own equipment. I have no desire to be Martin Scorsese at this stage of my life. I just come into the studio. There's mics already there. I put on my headphones. I walk away. It gets edited. It gets promoted, and it's the ultimate podcasting dream come true. So thank you, Brian, and thank you to all of my listeners and viewers. Peace out.